Hey, everybody, welcome to Freedom Talk. This is Free Talk Friday, which we're doing every week at 4 p.m. Central. There might be an occasion where I have a guest host. Somebody who'd be great is Joe Hoft here, my friend Joe. It's great. Joe, hey, you want to say hi to everybody and just let everybody know who you are?
Mm. Hey, Kelly, great to be here with you as always. I've had you on my show a number of times. I'm Joe
Oh,
Hoft. I'm at
okay, sorry about that.
Frank. What's that?
I had a little audio going from when I
Uh,
posted to Instagram, so go ahead.
yeah, anyways, yeah, I've got a show at Frank's Beach weekly, weekdays from 1 to 2 Eastern. And then I also write. I've got a number of books I've written, 3 behind me on this the 2020 election still, hoping I'm not going to be writing 3 books about this next election. And also, as many people know, I'm a contributor at the Gateway Pundit with my twin brother Jim, and also started a new site called joehoft.com where I can share my videos, my books, and as well as some posts there too.
Yeah, it's so great, Joe. Good to have you. And so, everybody who's watching, hopefully more and more will join. Please share with your friends, your contacts to join us because we're going to talk about some really important topics. One of them right now, Joe, and I know your brother Jim wrote a great article about this in Gateway Pundit, is the unfortunate sentencing of Tina Peterson. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was kind of heart wrenching. I don't know if you saw it yesterday. I saw pieces of it. Quite frankly, Kelly, I couldn't, I can't really stomach watching some of these people very long. I don't know if the word stomach or they're just, to me, it's like the devil's just pushing stuff at me and I just can only handle so much. This
Yeah.
judge was just vile, just disgusting. I've said to people, some friends that don't really know a lot about story, it's like she's really one of the nicest people or persons I've ever met. She's just salt of the earth, beautiful lady, just a beautiful lady. She's 69. She's had some challenges in her life. Her husband was sick towards the end of their time together, and her son. She lost her son, who was a soldier,
Yeah.
and in an accident, and a warrior, and just but she kind of, to me, was one of these people that just kind of stood strong, kept moving forward. Then she ended up running for this supervisor of elections position in a small county. I don't know if it's a small county or big county in Colorado, and her life changed. She's just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's just tragic to see this beautiful woman treated the way she's been treated.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, do you have a good idea of what she was accused of? I can pull up a media release I wrote, but you might offhand know some things about it.
Well, not I couldn't list them all for you. Here's my understanding. What happened in the movie Selection Code? People can go out there and see that. And I tell you what, that was moving. I saw it a couple times. It's a story about what happened to Tina and why she was indicted in the first place. So let me give you some background too. Colorado is now all mail-in ballots, so we haven't seen a Republican win races in states like that since they go to mail-in. So it's a scheme. It's a scheme by the left to steal elections. It's not safe. It's not secure. It's nothing that you would wish upon anybody that you cared about. It's absolute fraud. And so in 2020, one thing I noticed and I wrote about in 2020, and here's kind of a story, and Tina, I believe, knows this guy. I wrote, and I saw some numbers somebody was sharing with me. We've been focused on these other states, but in Colorado, Joe Biden got 500,000, 500,000 more votes than Hillary in order to beat Trump in Colorado. And that just didn't make sense because nobody liked Biden. His rallies, I recorded in my books, he only had 2,000 people, less than 2,000 his rallies compared to Trump's 1.1 million. It was a slaughter by Trump. And all of a sudden they're saying that he won an extra 500,000 over Hillary. It just didn't make sense. I wrote a piece about that. And this guy apparently started sending an email around to Republicans around the state saying, "Oh, it's crazy. Here's the reason why. It's very legitimate that Joe Biden gained that many in the state." And of course, he never sent it to me. Somebody else did though, and they said, "Look at this." And so I outed this guy, and then somebody else sent me some information on this guy. Oh, his wife works at Dominion. She's worked there for 10 years. So this is the guy that was slandering me behind my back. And then actually I even found a video later of him at a party with this woman by the last name of Howard, who ran the elections group. And she was in Colorado, and maybe Coomer was at this party too. So here's this guy, I think his last name was Crane, and he was accusing me of, just bad reporting behind this. Then one guy reached out to me, said he challenged me to a debate on the radio there, and I just turned it down. I said, why would I give this guy the time of day? It'd be stepping down. So anyways, total garbage. That's the state of Colorado. And then Tina, after the election, I think she originally thought it was a free and fair election, and then after that she ended up looking into something in maybe a follow-up election or something like that. Maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, and from that experience, there was then this effort by this Secretary of State, who's Soros-backed. George Soros, back 10 years ago, we learned this after 2022, had a project that he wanted to implement the Secretary of State's positions, and he did, and he had these nasty candidates, and some of them are still around. Benson in Michigan, who's just toxic, just pure evil. This lady in Colorado, Katie Hobbs in Arizona, who then stole her governor's election.
I was there election night at Kerry and the others that were running at their election night party. And oh, by the way, this picture, let me cut in here. This picture, Tina Peters is right above me. This is last year when I went out to speak in California at the Church of Glad Tidings, and Tina spoke as well. So that was the first time I met her in person. That's Charlita Bassett in the blue dress. She ran for California Senate against Pencil Neck. But, she was a sweet lady. Mm-hmm. And, these people who are stealing our elections, who have this whole system in place. And look, I've worked for Mike Lindell for 8 months now as communications director for the Lindell Offense Fund. It's all there. They damn well cheated. They're going to cheat again. It's all there. And in fact, you can look at, I put some articles out in media releases and such, that the Democrats were Ron Wyden from Oregon, Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. There's a documentary out called Kill Chain. They were raising the alarm after they lost power about the machines, and they're hackable and anybody could get in. They can connect to the internet. And then when they stole their power back, suddenly they flipped that narrative, and then they've taken Mike Lindell and canceled him everywhere and fought against him. Dominion sued him for, I don't even remember how much money. These people are vicious. They'll take a sweet little old lady, Gold Star mom, and put her in prison. They're going to put her away for 9 years. I hope Trump wins and pardons her, or something happens. But even on appeal, she's not violent. She's not a flight risk. Those are the two stipulations that have to be in place. And they immediately took her into custody while she appeals. So why is she going to be sitting in prison while she's appealing? That makes no sense.
It's abuse. I saw Jeff Clark came out with a couple clips today. He says, one, when the judge says 3 things, he made these statements that you've said things, that you've either written or reported things, something like that, and that you've done things. Clark says, well, the 2 of those 3 are First Amendment rights. She can say whatever she wants. That's her First Amendment. And he goes, therefore, this case is now appealable. This judge was way out of bounds. So that's good to know. But I listened to this judge yesterday. That's the piece that maybe leading up to is just, this guy was just vicious. And at the end, it's funny. He says, well, of course, he's trying to pretend like he's fair-minded. He's not. He's He's really just as disgusting a person as anybody I've ever seen. I could go on just a rampage of how disgusting this judge was, and I couldn't watch much. But at the end of this one clip that I saw, he calls her the famous woke term that she was privileged. And I was like, I can't even believe
it's that
this
whole white privilege. It's
guy.
completely racist, and Joe, I was just telling you before we went on, I don't think you were aware that I went through a trial too, and it was for misdemeanor 3 trespassing. I mean, it was literally tried in traffic court. My lawyer said they're prosecuting this like it's a felony. That so-called judge or magistrate, she refused to look at exculpatory evidence that showed in writing that I was innocent. That's what they'll do. This is what lawfare is about. It's not really using the law except when it's convenient. When the law happens to side with your political dogma and your agenda, then they'll use it. But otherwise, they will completely ignore it. I mean, look at Steve Bannon being in prison right now.
Yeah. Whereas
Merrick Garland, who also ignored a subpoena, is out free. He thumbs her nose. Look, the administrative state, these unelected bureaucrats, they're in charge and they want us to know it. And this mic went off there for a second. This is why they're doing this to you. This is why they did what they did to me. This is why they're doing it to Steve Bannon, because they want to scare and intimidate you. They want to say, look, if you speak out against us, you're next. We're going to kick your door down in the middle of the night.
But they want to punish you. They want to kill you ultimately.
How we need to respond is say, do your worst. And really, honestly, Joe, I know this sounds drastic, but I think her whole community, her church, everybody should have surrounded her and said, this woman's innocent. If you want to take her to prison, you're going to take all of us. And I was just thinking, Joe, as I was preparing to come on here, I have no doubt whatsoever that these people, that our government's being run by the elite right now, the Democrat elite. I have no doubt in my mind that they would have fought against the patriots who won our freedom, and they would have jailed them, imprisoned them, doing the same thing they're doing now. Absolutely no doubt. I mean, if you took them back in time, do you think they'd put up with, Samuel Adams ignoring a warrant for his arrest from Governor Gage of Boston? Do you think they would have put up with Paul Revere and George Washington and these people saying, screw you, we're writing a Declaration of Independence because you've gone beyond the pale on our rights. We have natural God-given rights. What would they have done if we brought those people forward in time? And this is what they do.
Yeah. I can tell you some personal stories. I don't know if you know my background, Kelly, but I
do somewhat. I mean, you've told me a little bit.
Did you hear about? The reason I came back to the States in 2020, did I share that story with you?
Please do. But first, I just want to say, go ahead if you can and email me that video. Maybe while I'm talking or something, and I'll put that in on the list here.
Yeah.
Go ahead and.
I tell you what you can do is go to Twitter and Real Joe Hoft, and I've got a video there that I just put up.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a 1-minute reel with Eric Metaxas. I can play that, and it'll give me a chance to run over.
Okay. Well, let's do that then. But then I can tell you the story about.
Okay, great.
I'll tell you a couple stories. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'll be right back.
To our friend Kelly Walker. You can find him at realfreedomtalk.com. Kelly, just a few more minutes. What's on your mind?
School parents have been targeted as so-called domestic terrorists. The Christians are being arrested for not affirming a gender or towing the woke line. And I started this conversation of, look, we need to have sanctuary for these people, because if we know that there's corruption in the legal system, the DOJ is corrupt, that the government's been weaponized against us, if we wait until they're pulling people in by the droves, it's too late. Believe me, my family knows what that's like. I hope people will look at our story and others and say, look, this could and probably will happen if we don't do anything. So we discussed various options. One of the low-hanging fruit in my mind is that we need to have sanctuary states, just like we have so-called sanctuary states for illegal immigration. But it takes just one to start, a governor or legislature saying, look, we understand lawfare is happening. We recognize the overreach of the federal government. We have political dissidents in our own country needing asylum. We're going to provide that, and we're going to review their case. And if we believe this is lawfare, if we believe this is political persecution, we're going to protect them. We're not going to allow them to be extra extradited. The county sheriff has the right to tell the feds to take a hike. They're talking about the county sheriffs being the last line of defense against tyranny. I've been working very, very hard. I recognize, Eric, where this can and will lead because I've lived it. And let's say we win the election, it's not going to solve everything. They're going to still keep trying to kill Trump. They're going to still keep going after the patriots, people who love America. I'm really, really committed to getting a system in place. But what I really need right now, Eric, is for people to get into this conversation. We need some big voices because we have to take this seriously.
We talk about this on the program just about every day. This is where we are. If you're not in this with us, you're against us. If you are going along, if you're going to some church that isn't interested in this, you're helping to make this happen. We are losing our freedoms day by day. If everybody would just push a little bit, just get in there a little bit, be brave, it would just change everything. Kelly, thank you.
Yeah, so I got the X link. I'm going to try to convert that into video. So why don't you go ahead and start on your story. In a moment, I want to talk about this idea of asylum for American political dissidents, but please do tell your story.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Grab that
Yeah,
video.
no, well, so I was a corporate executive over in Hong Kong. I'd been there about a decade back in from 2011 to 2020, and great position. That kind of tell people that my role and my track was in the corporate arena. Jim started Gateway Pundit about 2004, and I moved to Hong Kong in 2011. I had a opportunity to go over there for this Fortune 500 firm and create a audit team for this company over there, and did a number of audits around the world. I share this with people. You know, my background's auditing and finance. I also before that ran oversaw the financials for $1 billion and $2 billion, grew to $2 billion block of business in the Asia Pacific realm. Real super complex block of business. Lots going on. A lot of currencies, languages, locations, countries. Big job. And that helped me then as I was asked to go over there and do some auditing work. So I go over there. It's great. I'm going to audit committees around the world. I'm going to audit committees. I can remember in Australia, I'd sit there at the 24th floor, this nice building looking out. There's the Opera House. There's the Sydney Harbor Bridge. And enjoyed it. Loved the people there and everything. Loved this job. I had 20 years on this job. Then and I tell people this in July of 2019, they had a big party for me in Hong Kong. It was a Friday. They brought me in. The whole place was there, about 300 people, and they said, "The reason we're here today, Joe, is because you've got 20 years, and we're gonna, this party's for you." And not many people there had 20 years because the branch there hadn't even opened, or the office hadn't even opened barely 20 years prior. So it was a real honor. They told me they loved me, a couple guys, the CEO and the COO, and they gave me a nice little gift. The gift was this picture of me with Trump behind me. It's actually, they superimposed my face over Xi Jinping's and gave it to me, and the place just roared because they all knew I loved Trump. Short time, and I was bragging about my work writing at the Gateway Pundit because I started writing with Jim in about 2016. We both fell in love with Trump. So I'm writing every day there, doing my full-time job, feeling like, okay, I'm helping my country here, making great money here, in a great position, well loved, well liked. And then what happened is I wrote a piece in early 2020, March, about COVID. And my piece was, it's not that bad. You're not going to die. It's closer to the flu. And maybe I've shared the story with you or not, but basically it wasn't 3.4%. I looked at the numbers. I looked at it in a very short period of time, could see, no, Tedros was lying. This is not right. I put this up. Somebody else, other people were saying we're all going to die. Alex Jones had me and this other guy on a show one day say, hey, well, here's this guy saying we're all going to die. And a lot of people were scared. And then here's Joe Hoft who's saying, no, it looks like it's going to be close to the flu. So Jim and I are on Alex Jones. The next day, I get doxxed by Media Matters. And they say Joe Hoft, who works at in Hong Kong with this U.S. corporation, wrote this. And he was on Alex Jones and blah, 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 blah. And so the whole effort was to hurt me. And that's what they want to do. They want to hurt you. And so through a series of events, after 20 some years with this corporation that I loved, they loved me, I ended up separating, retiring, and coming back to the States. So that was my first experience with an attack from the nasty, evil ones that are trying to destroy our country. And the attack, as I look back, Kelly, was because I was absolutely right, but also because it was so important that they had this message that we're all going to die from COVID, so that the fear would instill in people, and allow them to, have people do all sorts of things, which we saw with COVID. So take away all our, personal freedoms for sure. So yeah, looking back, it was really important that they had to crush me for that. It was punishment for coming out with this. So I had a couple other great posts, and then came 2020. And then I, wrote a lot about the election using my, my expertise. I've put together these 3 books, basically really articles that I put together or was impressed with during that time. And came to the conclusion that the 2020 election never should have been certified. That's why it was stolen from a corporate executive and auditor and somebody that's been in board meetings around the world. I never would have certified this in a 1,000 years. Even, it was absolutely disgusting. As in the corporate world, in the real world, I say you have to. You're not going to sign off on anything that you don't have 1,000% a belief that what you're signing off on is accurate. And we go through all sorts of things in the corporate world, and even with billion-dollar blocks of business that are around the world, you've got to make sure every penny ties. And you do. There's different techniques that you do to ensure that throughout the year, so that at year end you can sign off on this stuff, and provide the auditors the evidence. It has to be auditable. This is what Harry Hari says about our elections. They're not auditable. And he loves the stuff I've been saying because they're not auditable. You never certify this stuff. So I had a number of great articles after the election. Jim and I were getting 5 million hits a day at Gateway Pundit with this reporting. It was really significant. A lot of people, because nobody else was one thing. And 2 is because we were spot on. We were over the target. And that's what, like I said, I put together in these books that are available at Amazon. But so the next thing was Jim and I get sued, and we get sued by some we get sued by this probably related, they're all cousins, the same people that are tied to Media Matters. I'm sure ultimately there's some force behind this lawfare, and we were facing about 400 or so attorneys on the other side when you add up all the revenues and attorneys that worked for all the firms that lined up against us. And yet, and Jim and I had nothing close at all. And we just recently settled just this past week, Kelly. And I can't say much about it, but I can tell you the experience was, just as much fun as the first one with Media Matters. It was hell. Again, I'm going to be guarded here on what I can say. There's certain things I agreed not to say and what to say. But it was just a nightmare. The whole process was a nightmare. And so here we are 2.5 years later. And, this is what's going on. The thing I was thinking about today earlier is, where's the billionaires on the right? Where are they to stand up and protect us? What the hell? What's going on? Yeah. Guys are getting crushed economically in all sorts of ways. People like you with just standing up, average citizens, me really an average citizen, just getting hammered for what I believe is right, reporting truthfully what I see and what I know from my background. I'm not an average, entry-level journalist. I've got, bucket loads of experience behind me, especially in auditing and finance and knowing what's right and what's wrong. And I never would have certified this election. And like you've said, and so, so anyways, that's kind of how I got here. And I could tell you more, but obviously, but I can't. And it's been a nightmare. The whole situation is nightmaric, if that's a word, just nightmarish. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, I experienced somewhat similar because I was working for a company called Strategic Dentistry, and it actually was continuing education for dentistry and medical. And I was editor-in-chief for their publication that went all over the country to doctors, dentists, other health practitioners. And they, out of everybody that they had to lay off because of COVID, I was new, but they didn't lay me off. But as soon as they found out I wasn't woke and on the left, because the company's out of Seattle, they suddenly came up with a reason to, oh, well, we ran out of funding for your position. And then we knew what it was. And if you lay someone off like that because you supposedly don't have money, you don't go and hire someone a few months later to fill the position. So,
Right.
And I've been sued by the very scumbag who threatened to kill my family, on and on. I've been arrested twice. It's a nightmare. And I realize it's not one that people want to step into willingly, but we're going to have to up our game and be willing to, well, I'll get to that in a moment, because I have your video. I want to play it, but I want to talk in a little bit about our Freedom Talk issue defiance for October,
Right.
and some steps to because we have to defy what's going on. There's no way out of it. Even let's say all our dreams come true, Trump gets elected. He's not going to fix it all. They'll still try to kill him. They'll still go after us. But you look like you were wanting to say something, and I can play your video in a moment.
Yeah, maybe we could pause on that just one moment. I guess what's hit me, Kelly, is that, so you charge ahead, you keep doing the next right thing, you keep sharing the truth. This is their enemies, the truth. And then it hit me one day, I got this picture. I haven't sent you this, but maybe you can see it here. It's a picture of this, my son. And he's got his hand on my shoulder. That's me there in the picture. I don't know. Maybe I can pull it up more. But this was at an event earlier this year in Florida where I was given an award alongside Steve Bannon and James O'Keefe. And it was for my writing. And my son's there, and he's a young guy and just a beautiful guy. And he puts his arm around me as they were introducing me to talk. He give me my award. And he whispers in my ear, "Daddy, they're talking about you." Now, I'm telling you,
jeez,
no money, no nothing could have given me that moment. So, yes, Media Matters doxed me. Yes, I've had to go through some lawfare here that's just been absolutely grotesque. These people are sick. But I never would have got that moment had I not been doing what I'm doing. And it's worth more than anything to me.
And we're still standing.
Yeah. And my son is saying to me, which he never would have appreciated had I just sat back and done nothing, "Daddy, they're talking about you." And I got this award, and he was so proud of me. I know he was. And what more would you want but to be there and have your son see you get an award for your efforts in just sharing the truth and being strong enough to do that with some really icons, I think, in our, in the conservative movement. So that's the reward. It's priceless. The reward's priceless. And personal integrity is priceless. There's no cost. There's nothing you can pay for that. And that's why I feel real. I've always attempted to be as honest as I can. And I mean, honest, period. I don't want to say as I can. I want to say absolutely honest in my reporting. If it's not accurate, I'm gonna make some changes, whether minor or major. I'm gonna make those changes to make things right. So, anyways, the rewards are there. They're greater than anything you'd ever imagine.
Yeah, as I was getting ready earlier, I was listening to an interview of Tulsi Gabbard, and she was saying, who's the government run by? Well, it's run by these elites, and they think that they own the information. They think that they have the right to be the arbiters of what's true and what's not. The same people who are saying that they don't know what a woman is, and people can change genders. And I'm an environmental scientist, by the way. I worked in conservation for years. I was on a graduate fellowship at the Department of Defense, and I can tell you the whole global warming, I'm probably going to get kicked off YouTube now because I'm live streaming to that, but the whole global warming thing is way overblown. I mean, it is not the crisis they say it is. but that's another story. Would you like me to play this video?
Sure. So let me give you a little kind of heads up on what it is, an intro. It's so we've been working since 2020 on how we're going to win this next election. And we formed a group about a year ago. It was just like, who's doing anything? What's really getting done here? I wasn't happy with what I was seeing. So started a group, and one by one, we added people to it, some real smart people. And at the end, we've decided, okay, we can't, here's what we're going to do. We got to clean up voter rolls. We got a guy who's been working on that, Chris Jersky. He's doing great work. I don't know if you know Chris. And he's cleaned up a number of voter rolls in these key states, Florida, Texas, and the swing states. He's got that handled. We'd like to get rid of the machines, but we kind of went in with the assumption we're not going to get rid of the machines by this election, even though we absolutely should.
Yeah.
And but they're going to be there. But there are other groups like Harry Hari and Marley Hornick who are attacking the entire election process from the basis that these things we're not complying with the law, and that could eventually get rid of these machines. So they're doing a great job there. We just kind of, okay, what can we do? And we ended up coming up with this idea that what we can do is what we do in the corporate world. We institute reconciliations throughout the process, ensure that all the numbers are accurate, guard the paper ballot. So it's the paper that we're focused on. And we're gonna do that. We've designed reconciliations, et cetera. And earlier today, came out with this video on my show. We're going to try to push this idea over the next few days. Hopefully, you can reshare it and others. And the idea is we got to reconcile these numbers before the election, before the counting's done, because if you're not in first place when the counting's done, you lose because nobody's there for you. So here's kind of an intro to this idea of reconciliations.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm looking down a lot because I'm especially on FreeTalk Friday, I'm always producing and pulling up clips and photos and things that are apropos. So I promise I'm paying very close.
I know. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let me play that video. Thanks for the intro.
Hi, my name is Joe Hoft. I spent years working overseas in finance and audit and in the United States. I also wrote 3 books on the 2020 election steal. Over the past few years, numerous professionals and concerned citizens across the country have worked together on solutions to ensure the 2024 election is free, transparent, and fair. We have a solution, but we need your help. Our solution helps all political parties and election officials across the country. We believe that implementing a robust election reconciliation program is the answer. In 2022, 1/3 of all ballots were cast by mail in the election. Most of these ballots were processed at large counting centers with limited independent oversight. This needs to be addressed. Reconciliations are implemented in multiple industries to ensure accuracy. Workers compare 2 separate sets of records to ensure the totals match. Additional reconciliations in elections will rebuild the trust in the election process, identify errors or fraud before certification, improve election accuracy, reduce litigation, and create audit trails. Surveys show that over half of U.S. voters believe cheating will likely affect the outcome of the 2024 presidential election. Voters wonder, will my ballot be counted, especially if I vote by mail? Will my ballot be counted correctly? Will my vote be reported correctly? Will my vote be canceled by an illegal ballot? Implementing reconciliations can address these concerns. We can reconcile the number of vote by mail ballots with valid chain of custody forms, for example, to ensure ballots coming into a center are valid. We can reconcile the number of ballots counted to the number of verified voters. We can reconcile poll tapes printed by vote counting machines to totals tabulated on election night to ensure no extra ballots are entered into the election. We can reconcile ballots processed as displayed on vote counting machines at the end of the day to the number at the beginning and the next day to ensure no additional ballots were entered into the election overnight. Many more types of reconciliations can be performed with minimal effort. The RNC, DNC, and election workers can easily implement reconciliations in the election. Election officials should ensure all votes are supported by ballots and allow observers to determine the same before certification of the election. Everyone can contribute to the reconciliation programs. You can vote, you can volunteer, and you can promote this reconciliation program to election officials, the RNC, and the DNC. Do what you can. Reconciliations are simple, All you have to do is ensure results agree with supporting information. Information and reconciliation templates are available at defendflorida.org and fate2024.org. We can do this, but we need your help.
That's fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's so important that we all get involved. And people tend to focus on the big names and the flashing lights and everything else, but honestly, it's saving the country's up to all of us. And I'm no one special. For example, I've just been willing to fight, and I have the ability to get up in front of the camera, the ability to write, and so on. And it's funny, Joe, because someone once said on Instagram, commented, I forget on which post, but they said, why doesn't somebody do something? Everybody's all talk. And I said, well, why don't you do something? And they said, well, I'm just a nobody. And I was like, what do you think I am? Like, we don't wear golden trousers or something. Like, we work, we struggle, we try to figure out how we're going to make this week's grocery budget, just like anyone else. But Joe, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that video?
Yeah. So at the very end, we note these two organizations. Fate2024.org is the organization I'm tied in with, and we've got a couple articles. I put them up at joehoft.com today on fate2024.org. I pushed them over to Jim at the Gateway Pundit. Hopefully we'll get them up there too. We've got some other individuals going to help push that. But what we do is we provide a bunch of different reconciliations and ideas on various ways that, numbers that should be reconciled. So nothing should come into any precinct or vote counting facility that isn't, validated, that we don't know where it's coming from or who it's coming from. Nothing should even be transferred throughout any one of these facilities without knowing. We've got to, ensure that certain things happen. This is what you do in accounting. This is finance stuff. This is audit stuff. If you have an end of year number, that has to be tied to some support. It's always in, you find independent, support. So if somebody says, here's our sales for the year, you ask for the invoices, and you tie those then back to supporting information from people you've sold maybe trinkets to or whatever. And that's what you do as an auditor, is you tie that information coming from the clients to this company's number, so it's independent. It's not something the client produced that they made up. It's something that you're getting from an independent source. And we've got a number of ideas there, and a couple articles where we provide those even examples of forms that you could use to reconcile. So the next step is we need people to get signed up, and I think a lot of people have already as observers. The next step is, if you're going to be an observer, work with some others and grab a couple of these reconciliations that you think are important, and make sure that you by the end of the night you think everything ticks and ties. Our problem has been throughout this process is that nothing reconciles at the end. The numbers don't make sense, and numbers are being inserted, ballots are being inserted, all sorts of stuff. And there's ways we can safeguard that.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody to go to lindellplan.com as well. And I didn't realize till I started working for Mike Lindell just how comprehensive his work is, and he collaborates with everyone. You have a show on Frank's Speech, which is going to rebrand to Vocal, but there are over 300,000 election volunteers that have been trained by Cause of America all over the country. There are extensive plans in place. So take a look at that. Look at the plan for securing our elections. And, Joe, tell us where people can contact you and get more information and watch your show and all the rest.
Yeah. So probably the best place is joehoft.com, where I put my show up. There's also, I've got a couple, social media sites. I got to tell you, I am terribly shadow banned, I believe, to the max. I mean, it's been amazing. I'll give you an example. When I was and it's because I was really dropping some bombs on the Mueller gang too. I could see these guys were doing the right thing during Trump's presidency. I was writing articles and just dropping some bombs on them.
Yeah.
and I would believe I was shadow banned then, but I could tell you, here's what happened. I wrote some stories on Hunter Biden back in week before the election, and I did get censored by Twitter. They took me down temporarily for a couple days. During those couple days, I got 10,000 followers, and I was like, this is unusual. And so I think when they shadow banned you, the things get knocked off when you're when they shut you down for a couple of days. So I was able to gain followers then. I just think there's something to it. Anyways, that's my excuse. I just don't think I've got a large enough following based on the work I've done. But I do have accounts out there at Twitter, Facebook, and Truth. Yeah.
I want to play a little video. I'll play a few little spots, but I believe this is Emerald Robinson. You know Emerald, but I believe this is the one where she talks about how the machines are hackable. 1 second.
Okay.
News on the election fraud front in the Dominion defamation case against our very own Mr. Mike Lindell. The judge in the case has ordered Dominion's founder to sit for a deposition. Evidence shows since at least 2020, a third party configured its machines with plain text master decryption keys in an election database protected by nothing other than Windows login credentials easily bypassed. With these keys, a malicious actor has total control over electronic voting systems. Eyewitnesses have testified to having experienced during the 2020 election in their local counties.
I witnessed so many irregularities when I was there on election day on the 3rd. So he walked me over to the high-speed scanners and tabulators. And he said, see all these Ethernet lines running out of the tabulators? They're all bundled together as they accumulate, and then they're all connected to these routers. These are all hooked into the internet, and that is illegal, and it should not be happening because it opens them up to hacking.
Meanwhile, the Dominion voting systems leadership has testified in hearings across the country. This.
Voting systems are, by design, meant to be used as closed systems that are not networked. They are not connected to the internet. There is no internet connectivity at all.
The DeKalb GOP filing concludes with these stark words stating, quote, the Secretary of State's failure to enforce mandatory security requirements for encryption keys has compromised Georgia's election systems and left them vulnerable to any malicious actor, foreign or domestic, to manipulate election results without likely detection.
All these machines are online. This is the way things are. This is our world. You talk about Georgia. Obama appointed judge a year ago said, you know what? We're going to finally look into this because the experts say that there's problems with these machines. If you question the machines, you're not a conspiracy theorist. That went to court on January 9th. Haldeman, in 5 minutes with a ballpoint pen, hacked into the machines, flipped an election in front of that judge. Everyone says to me, Mike, where's that case at? Well, the judge is sitting on it. If you were that judge, you'd probably sit on it too, because what would the answer be? You melt down these machines and turn them into prison bars.
Democrats admit voting machines. I mean, they long have said they were easily hacked. In fact, this is what some Democrats had to say about machines being hacked. Take a listen.
I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable.
Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that ballot recording machines and other voting systems are susceptible to tampering.
Even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes.
Because you support Donald Trump, you've been relentlessly attacked for saying the very same thing we just heard Sheila Jackson Lee and Adam Schiff say right there.
I think the public's waking up and more is coming out. Isn't it funny, right before this election, all this stuff starts coming out, but yet I've been decimated with lawsuits and everything else by these corrupt machine companies. It's disgusting.
That's great. Yeah, I can't hear you.
I unmute myself. These were all Democrats that you saw, and the Democrats were all over the machines. They're hackable. They answer to no one. All the things that Mike Lindell says now.
Yeah, I wonder if there was a war on words there where they're saying, well, we don't use the internet, but maybe we use cellular. Maybe there's some other vehicle that we're transferring data, but clearly these machines have the ability for outsiders to somehow get into them. And we even know it from an audit report by the government. The government went in and wrote a report too on Georgia. Haldeman's report. And that's what I wrote about in my book. I just reported what the government said. The CISA that said the elections were the most secure ever. Then they turn around and they say, oh, by the way, these machines in Georgia are not secure.
Yeah. Yeah,
unbelievable.
It's all there. I mean, the trail is there, and what they do, of course, is through the censorship, they keep that information from going out. They'll censor you. They'll shadow ban you. They'll silence you, and ridicule you, and if necessary, they'll prosecute you, which is what they did to Tina Peters. Because you know what I understand, it's somewhat complicated because they brought, oh gosh, I think 9 or 10 charges against her. I think 7 they stuck, but essentially what happened was she was county recorder for Mesa County, Colorado, and the Secretary of State, I believe it was there, and the electronic voting machine company wanted to do a process whereby all the voting records would be deleted, which is apparently illegal. So Tina made a backup copy, and they punished her severely because, and she reported this to the authorities, and instead of investigating it, you know, the FBI kicked down her door at night with armed thugs. You'd think she was some sort of warlord. It's just, it's gone past the point of any kind of sanity. But I wanted Joe to bring up the October issue of Freedom Talk magazine. You have a great article in there entitled "Fight, Fight, Fight." Really inspiring article. But the theme of this issue is look at that quote on the cover by Ayn Rand: "Defiance, not obedience, is the American's answer to overbearing authority." And I have an article with 3 steps in it for defiance. We don't want to get violent if at all possible. And you know, I talk about if someone I know who says, you know, call me when the shooting starts, and all we have, you know, all anybody's doing is talking. And I'm like, well, we're in an information war, so talking and writing are very important. But we really don't want to get to the point where we're shooting, because historically that doesn't work out real well for anybody. But I have 3 steps for defiance. One is accept the reality and gravitas, or seriousness, of the times. And I say, unless you fully believe that the United States Republic is on the verge of falling to a globalist takeover, you will lack the conviction that you must act immediately. I write better than I speak. So and this is Joe, this is one of the hardest things right now. I'm going to go through the 3 points, then we can discuss, but just getting people to realize we are in a serious situation. This isn't going to go away. Even if Trump gets elected, that's not going to take it away. People hide from it. It's like, you know, if somebody got a cancer diagnosis and they just go about it and say, well, if I ignore it, it's going to go away. You know, and number 2, stand on your natural God-given rights. Let me read that. No, not just constitutional rights. The Constitution and Bill of Rights are merely an incomplete enumeration or list of some of our God-given liberties and prerogatives. In point of fact, several of the founding fathers opposed having a federal constitution because of the broad powers it would confer on centralized government, and because it could be interpreted as limiting our rights. I'm not downing the Constitution at all. It's a great tool, but we won our country before we had a constitution, operated without it for 11 years, formed our government before the Constitution, and granted, you know, the Constitution gave some order and process to our government, which is fantastic. But ultimately, our freedom, our republic, everything we believe in is based on the idea of natural God-given rights, and we need to talk about that again, because the Bill of Rights and Constitution even can be used against us. But read the article to get more on that. And then number 3, this is a hard one for people, but refuse to obey anyone or anything, including any law, judge, lawmaker, or executive who would infringe upon or deprive you of your natural rights. Now, one of the reasons I focus on natural rights is because these tyrants, these bad actors, these corrupt people, they can and will use the law as a weapon against you. But no law that deprives you of those natural rights is valid. And by the way, there's a great article in here by someone who writes under the pen name of Madame Publius. Publius was, I think it was James Madison who wrote under that pseudonym, but talking about, let's see, I'm trying to find it here. The sacred maxim of free government. So, you know, Freedom Talk magazine right now is 18 pages. It's pretty short, somewhere between a magazine and a newsletter. You can listen to it. Just go to the front cover and click on that little sound button. This issue takes about 40 minutes to listen to, but it's just so important, Joe, that we educate ourselves. We understand what our country was built upon, because as Samuel Adams said, basically, well-educated people who are taught virtue are going to, well, I'm paraphrasing, but are going to be really, it's going to be really hard to take us over. We'll be free. I can look up that quote.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Joe, thank you for your contribution to Freedom Talk magazine. It's a really,
thank you. No, thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor. Yeah. I just thought at Defiance, I thought Trump's raising his fists, saying, fight, fight, fight. Maybe we talked about this the other day. I can't remember, but when he did that, I was like, oh my God, what is, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he was saying. It just didn't hit me on deep. Is he saying the F-bomb or is he saying,
I thought that too. I thought at first he was saying FFF,
yeah. And then I look and I'm like, they're saying he said fight. And I'm like, fight. And then probably I had to see it. And then it hit me. He's saying fight. What a powerful thing to say. It took me a while. It was so deep,
Yep. Check this out real quick.
Being that when it comes to lawfare, obviously Trump is front and center when it comes to just endless lawfare and the resources that it can take up.
I've been arrested twice for speaking out. We recently saw the kangaroo court trial of Tina Peters. Steve Bannon is in jail. Peter Navarro just got out. Rule of law says that the people's law, or the law of the land, is there to protect our rights. Rule by law, what we're seeing now, is using the law against the people to cudgel them, to control them. And we've got to stop it, which is why I've been working very hard on, is there a way we could get sanctuary states, sanctuary counties, places where people could go domestically and say, hey, my own government is politically persecuting me. I need somebody who's fair and objective. How do we go to these courts and expect justice from the very people who are taking justice? The DOJ is bought out, deeply, deeply bought out. Ultimately, the biggest perpetrators are Merrick Garland and Chris Wray. Look, you can do your homework and find this all out, but they will suppress it. And if you speak out, if you try to go against them, you might just get a bullet buzzing in your ear. Yeah. I mean, what a world we live in. And you can imagine, Joe, if someone had taken shots at Kamala or someone on the left, they would, I mean, it would be a manhunt like you wouldn't believe. They'd be kicking down people's doors. They wouldn't be saying the person acted alone. And yet we have, I love Eric Metaxas calls them the state-run media. He said, don't say mainstream media. So I'm going to call them state-run media because that's
great.
What they are. But the state-run media would be all over this. There would be people going to prison, sort of a J6 type response. But what I'm trying to move people to, Joe, is to start looking at things differently, because we keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, which is the definition of insanity. We're going to have to step it up. I think I played that. Did I play that reel by Eric Metaxas where he's talking about? It's one I just released today. He's talking about standing up in defiance, doing something. He writes about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a staunch Christian, very well known pastor and Christian, but he participated in countering the Nazi government. In fact, he was even involved in a plot to kill Hitler, which is, there are a lot of people who are Christian that think that we're supposed to be pacifists. They look at Romans 13, for example, be subject to the governing authorities. That's a mistake. That's a misinterpretation. There are plenty of scriptures like we ought to obey God rather than men. And honestly, that scripture was to a certain people at a certain time, because the Roman Empire, for all of its faults, had a stabilizing, peaceful influence. And there were Jews at the time, I forget what they called them, but they would go around with daggers and stab Roman officials every chance they got, which created huge problems for the Jewish people, culminating in the destruction of the temple and the wiping out of most of the Jews in 70 AD. So it was very specific to them, saying, look, stop trying to rebel against these people. You aren't going to win. But Romans 13 doesn't mean that we don't stand up to evil. Like if someone was breaking in your house to kill your family, would you just open the door and say, well, go to it? We're not to be pacifist.
Archbishop Vigano came out with a piece probably half a year, maybe a year ago, where he says, hey, it is okay to raise your fists. It's okay. He said, and we needed to hear that from especially a religious leader to say that, it's okay to protect your family, your country, and and your God-given rights. That's okay. And a lot of people don't realize this. I really didn't either, that in the Catholic Church there's a number of people that have been deemed saints. Number of these saints were warriors. And then they became saints. It's hard, I think, to stand up. You can relate, I'm sure. It's hard to stand up when everybody's sitting back. It's hard to, you get ridiculed. What are you doing? What's going on, man? I'm making, let's go golf tomorrow. Let's just move on. What are you doing? Wasting your time or whatever. It's hard. It's hard to just kind of continue to fight. And yet, it's the right thing to do right now, for sure.
Yeah, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, he was in a Soviet Gulag for 8 years. He wrote, the quote is something like, "Every man has a dozen glib little reasons why he's right not to sacrifice himself." And honestly, I think Christians can cop out, and it's done. We're not to live in fear, but it's done out of fear. And it's a cop out saying, well, God will take care of everything. Jesus is on his throne. He'll take care of everything. It's never, read from Genesis to Revelation. God's people never just sit back and say, God will handle it. He expects us to go and arm up in the armor of the Christian and go to battle, which mainly should be speaking out. John Amunchukwu was just arrested at a school board meeting. It should be being defiant, peacefully defiant. I mean, you should have had church groups outside of Tina Peters' hearing singing hymns and linking arms. Like, where are we? Where are the churches? Look, where would we be if people had had this attitude in World War II? Where would we be if people had had this attitude in 1776? We wouldn't even have a country. You wouldn't be here wimping out and finding proof text verses to justify cowardice. Get in the game. Get in the game.
Well, Kelly,
go ahead,
Kelly,
Joe.
I was just going to say, I thought I heard, and more recently as well, that at the revolution, there was just a lot of people that didn't participate. It was a relatively small group that won that war. And that's how it is too. I think probably, that's how it is. There's a lot of people just stand off to the side and they're happy to just, benefit from whatever happens, praying maybe for the best. I don't know. But
human nature hasn't changed. And, Joe, I was really worried for a while because I thought, well, all of America's enemies have been overseas. They Abraham Lincoln said something like all the armies in the world couldn't take a drink from the Ohio River, whatever that quote was. But then I realized, I thought about it deeper and I thought, well, this was the situation. We're in a very similar situation to what we were prior to the Revolutionary War, because, a good half the country or more were loyalists to the British Crown. We had Britain itself in the country. And, look, we're up against drones and technology and AI and everything now. But, based on the weapons they had, they were way overmatched, just like we feel that we are. But it's that spirit of defiance. And honestly, it's courage and conviction and commitment that will take back this country. There's no substitute for that.
Well, and we're winning, Kelly. Kelly, we're winning. Today, I just noticed there's a picture of Kamala Harris's rally. 47 people are there. Some guys, this is it. There's 47 people here. Trump, on the other hand, I saw this picture of him today leaving Georgia. The streets are packed. Looks like they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 deep. People cheering as he's going down the road, leaving Georgia, heading his way to North Carolina. This is the reality. We are winning. Trump's fight resonates with people, and they're seeing what's happening. And the other good information out there that indicates we're winning is that a year ago, Rasmussen says, hey, 62% of Americans believe the 2020 election was rigged. 65% in a poll short time later believe that the January 6th was a setup. These numbers are consistent, I think, with America. And that number of 65%, 2/3 of America, is only growing now.
Yeah.
So we're winning. We're winning.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that waking up is because the other side has been violent and too aggressive. And that's one of the good reasons why we need to not be violent. We need to be like, I'm a man, I need to be masculine and stand up. Women, you need to be strong. And, a lot of women, and I do this too, we need the Papa Bears, but to go to the schools, but we got some great Mama Bears, and we're courageous. We don't back down, we stand up, but we don't operate out of hate. Our best weapon is love. And we've seen some people from the left come over. I have some great video because I went with Mike Lindell to Chicago for DNC when he shaved his mustache to make a point. And we had a whole room full of Black Democrats from Chicago who flipped because they've seen what happened, and I want to play this video real quick because this is something that happened recently, and you'll see how the left operates, and ultimately this is going to hurt them. Sorry, the audio is not very good. Captions will pick up in a moment here.
Yeah, I've seen this. I know I know it's in Palm
Beach County. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see that woman wasn't belligerent. She was sitting down. Look at them wrenching her arms.
You know what, my bag, since 2022, I've been trying to get an answer about this. I am a taxpayer here in Palm Beach County, and I am sick and tired of this game that's being played. This is really horrible. This is really horrible. Please get off. I'd like to. No, ma'am, we got the opportunity. You know what, if I get bruised.
Ma'am, stop. You are not leaving with the badge.
Take your hand off. This is really horrible. Please take your hands off of me. I want to get my stuff. This is really, truly disgusting. This is disgusting. I am a taxpayer here in Palm Beach County, and I am trying to ask a simple question about the two different styles of paper that are being used. This is really.
You are no longer welcome here.
Oh my goodness! You know what?
Damn order takers.
I have a purse. Let me grab that.
I love this lady because she just protests the whole time. I think that's great. And here's one thing too, Joe. People say, because when I was arrested twice, people said, well, like the first time, sue the pants off them. I hope you get them. Well, there were two things for us because we got a lawyer, thanks to some people donating to us. But he was negotiating a settlement starting at $2 million for what they did to me. But it came with a gag order. So we ended up turning it down. We fired the lawyer because we realized he's just trying to negotiate. He's not actually standing up for our civil rights. We also made the decision, look, we got to fight for everybody. Okay, let's say we went off and had hundreds of thousands of dollars out of this, but I can't fight. It's not worth it. You can't buy my silence. But then after that, we couldn't afford to sue. The second time I was arrested, we couldn't afford lawyers. I mean, and this is how they get you, because they first of all, they'll arrest you falsely. They don't care. And if you go and appeal it, which the second time I could have appealed and I would have won. But then it's another, they stole $10,000 out of our home fund. And then by the way, it would have been $10,000 to retain a lawyer. So they win that way, because if you appeal and win, you've lost your finances for your family. It affects your health because it's still stressful. But so what I want to say is, like, and John Amanchukwu, who was just arrested, so many people say, oh, just sue them, go get them. It's not that simple. And like in my case, suing the county, they have the county lawyers. They don't have to pay anything. The taxpayers pay them. So it's not that easy.
No, it's not. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have it.
Well, I want to play you a video, Joe, and I know we're getting close to calling it a day, but I got to know this woman. She actually, after my first arrest, when I went back to the coffee shop we had in Tucson, I was sitting in there. It was like afternoon, nobody was in there. She comes walking in. She wrote her memoirs. It's a book. You can find it on Amazon. She passed away a few years ago, but 84-year-old old, Krista Reynolds. It's called Born to War. It's her memoirs of being a child in Nazi Germany, experiencing the Berlin airlift, understanding what communism is. And she came up to me, little old lady, and said, Kelly, I have not been this afraid since I was a little girl. And I stood up.
Wow.
And I put my arm around her and I said, Krista, you will never have to go through that again as long as there are men like me in the world. And she was so wonderful. And, it's one thing for me, I just turned 55, which is still relatively young in some ways, but it's one thing for somebody like me to say, look, I see patterns that we've seen in previous times. Krista lived it and she saw the patterns. And I just want to play this couple minutes video. You'll see some things about Krista. You'll see her. She has a piece of the Berlin Wall. Her husband, Merton, was a veteran of the Air Force.
Kelly, I'm so scared. This is exactly what it was like when I was a little girl. So there's a couple clips there too to put some credibility toward this.
You also have some sense that there's a connection between what happened to you then and what is happening today.
Krista has told me several times, I have not been this afraid since I was a little girl. And tonight you're going to hear more about that story. You're going to understand why socialism and communism sound good at first. And hey, look, free money. The state cares about me. But a lot of people who are drawn in by that swan song just do not understand where this leads. Krista and Merton understand from living in it what it means. And every young person in America needs to hear from people like Krista Reynolds.
And much needed is a shout out to Kelly for supporting me in an effort to get the American people woke regarding the misery we face if we slide into socialism. Kelly is a true patriot, a body, in body, mind, and spirit. 1930s, Hitler and the National Socialist Party, Nazis, came into power. At the beginning, it was all good. Germany was in deep depression. People lost everything. Unemployment was high. Many people had, he promised to recover the economy. Now the control of the population begins. It became mandatory for all those high in industrial and government positions to become card-carrying members of the Nazi Party. Otherwise, bad things were going to happen. And at some point, a national ID card was required for everyone above the age of 15. This ID card was necessary for such things as buying a train ticket.
And there are still people today who will listen to your story and they feel really bad about it. They see zero connection between what is happening today, where to me, I see an absolute repeat of history. So I have to believe that you also have some sense that there's a connection between what happened to you then and what is happening today. And what would you say that you see that is similar?
Yeah, well, that's one thing. But also what I see here now, what they call the mass Nazis. And people, already talking, I just, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to think of it, but it scares me.
So, yeah, if I could leave people watching with one thing to ponder over the weekend, it's that we are very much in this situation, and there are people who want to bring these things on us. In fact, we're seeing a resurgence of both, communism, the Chinese Communist Party. I could talk for hours about that, but also some fascist ideas worming their way back in because people don't understand their history. But we have to understand this is real, and we're far down that path. And even if Trump gets elected into office, which God willing, I hope he does, it isn't going to automatically fix everything. There are some very, very evil people. They're behind trying to take him out legally with a bullet every way they can, and they want you. They want to go after you. But I was canceled out of my job. We ended up losing our coffee shop after fighting like like hell. And we actually beat Pima County pretty hard because somebody said recently, told my wife who'd been a customer at our shop, that none of this would have stopped in Tucson if we hadn't, well, she said if Kelly hadn't made a stand. And I told my wife it's a combined effort because you support me, in every way imaginable. But, if there's one thing I could leave you with, it's take this very seriously. Because every culture where this has happened, everyone without exception said it can't happen here. People said, well, something or someone's going to save us. They're going to come swooping in. It's this state of denial. And for us to stop this, I hope you will go to realfreedomtalk.com and read or listen to that whole issue, because we need this wake-up call. We need to understand that it could happen here, and it will if we don't stand up against it. And I've talked to Eric Metaxas. I've also talked to Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. Look that up on YouTube, Inspiring Philosophy. It's a great channel. But, they've said that prophecy is conditional, that it's relationship based. A lot of us believe in end times, and some people sit back and say, well, we're in the end times. What are you going to do? It's conditional, because when we step up and do what needs to be done and get involved, God will forestall that. He'll put it off. It's happened again and again. It happened with Nineveh when Jonah finally learned his lesson and went in and preached to them. And it can happen here too. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So prophecies, according to these two, and I tend to agree with this, and I have a degree in theology too, which only means something. But I agree that it is not an absolute, like this is going to happen at this time, because we have a relational God, and depending on how we respond, if my people who are called in my name will repent of their sins, he will turn it around. So that's my little sermon. I'm a preacher's kid. That's the example I had growing up.
Wow, that's great. No, and think about defiance. Here's President Trump going back to Butler tomorrow, bringing with him the family of the guy who was shot and killed, as well as Elon Musk. So it's going to be quite an event tomorrow.
Wow, I can't wait for that. Joe, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for being a part of Freedom Talk. And I just saw something that your brother Jim, that it looks like Gateway Pundit is going to be joining Frank's speech in some fashion, maybe with different shows or something. But everybody go check out joehoft.com. Go to frankspeech.com, look for Joe's show there. And, thank you. Spread the word that we're going to do this Free Talk Friday, every Friday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 Eastern.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Have a great weekend.
All right. You too. Thanks a lot, Joe. Citizen journalism's on the rise. But why is that? Well, it's because the mainstream media is full of propaganda and lies. That's why I'm working really hard for you every day to bring you great information and to fight for the things that are important to you. So if you're tired of the lamestream media and politicians who make big promises but don't do a lot of delivering, invest in spreading truth by making a monthly recurring donation at realfreedomtalk.com/give. Everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us. And keep hope alive, be encouraged, and also have courage. We'll talk soon. Bye.